Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at USAGlobalTV.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hi, Red O'Loughlin here on The Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Today, I'm truly honored. Chris Doelle's been a friend of mine for a while. We've been networking together, and a couple weeks ago, he started a webinar at nights, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, where he's talking about networking, which is probably more in the field of Gail Stolzenberg, who's a partner with him in this event. Then last week we talked about podcasting, and this week we're talking about artificial intelligence. And he does such a magnificent job on the podcasting. I says he has to come on the show, and he's here today. Now, if you take a look at his, please join me, Chris. Chris Doelle. If you look at his last name, kind of an unusual spelling, but it's pronounced Daly. No, there we go.
Hey, there I am.
So Doelle. Tell us about that.
Well, I just took my dad's word for it when I was growing up. I'm like, really? But it's German of origin. And, I've been having that argument with first day of school teachers all through my life.
And I thought I had a problem just having an apostrophe in my last name. But that's mainly dealing with computers, not so much people.
Oh, that's true.
I can't tell you how many times that apostrophe has really created havoc in the computer world. But it's interesting. I had one email account once that had the apostrophe in it. I never got any spam. Everybody else in the office was getting stuff all the time. So who knows?
Nice.
Anyway, Chris, you've been around the world for a while. Why don't we bring people up to date on who you are, where you came from, what's going on, how did you get to where you are today? Take a couple of minutes and do us the 30,000-foot view of Chris Doelle.
Cool. Well, I was born a poor black child. That's not true. That's a line from Steve Martin's The Jerk. Now, I'm a tech nerd. I always have been. I've been trying to be on the cutting edge, or hopefully not the bleeding edge of technology. I've done everything from computer support company to video production company to the podcasting world. We've talked about that. And now AI, that's my big exciting thing right now. So I do it all. I just love to learn and to figure out ways to take that technology and utilize it for business, for health, for whatever it is to improve your lives.
Now, with the technology the way it is, about 20 years ago, you ventured off into something that's now become very popular, podcasting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the origins of that and how you got involved and where it's going from there?
Sure. Yeah. I was doing internet radio at the time. Some people may remember things like Winamp, where you could line up a whole bunch of songs in your player, broadcast them out to the world. I was doing a bunch of that and connected with some other nerds in California who were doing it. And 2004, Dave Weiner and Adam Curry. You may remember the name Adam Curry. He was an MTV VJ, one of the originals. He did a show called The Headbangers Ball. Turns out he wasn't just a metalhead, he was a nerd. And those two invented podcasting. I happened to know them, interact with them, and was one of the early folks to create a podcast. My first show was called Lone Star Gridiron, covering my other great love, Texas high school football. And it has blown up and hasn't stopped. And it's still a site now that gets millions of hits a year.
Texas high school football. Who's really interested in that?
Right. Yeah, nobody. It's a small niche, right?
Here in Texas, really, really big deal.
Yeah.
But it's more than just you podcasting. You're talking to somebody. So who are you talking to, and what's so interesting about Texas high school football?
Well, it's two different questions. Who I'm talking to in a podcast. One of the first things I did was I tested it out in a bunch of different ways just to see what was the best business model. So I did a hyper local one, which was I was living in Houston at the time. I did one called This Week in Houston. I also did the regional one, the Texas high school football one, and then I did a national one in 2005 called the Pod Music Countdown, where we counted down a la Casey Kasem, the top songs being played out in podcasts around the world, just to learn the business model. And again, my passion being Texas high school football, that was the one that had the most staying power. I mean, don't get me wrong, the music one had 100,000 downloads a week. It was insane, but it was nerds. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody was willing to advertise or to do anything like that. So that one ended up shutting down. But if it wasn't for the fact that, I really loved high school football, I probably would have shut that one down too.
Okay, so part of the business of being a podcaster is having a passion or a little bit of love for what you're doing. It brings you back week after week, keeps everything current. And, new coach shows up over here. They don't do well for a while. Why, coach? What's going on? So you actually get a chance to talk to people, and they know who you are. They know the audience. And so that passion comes out in the process of you asking the right questions because you've been around the block a few times. But you mentioned a really valuable word in podcasting that I think that is really and truly separates the casual podcaster with the business podcaster. And that's the word advertising.
Mm-hmm.
So if people have a podcast and they're not advertising anything, how are they being supported other than just they have their passion?
Well, that's good. Great question, because early on there was no support. When I was doing the Texas high school football one, it was me and my best friend since junior high school, and me convincing him to do the show with me. Because look, I said, Mike, we can get into the game for you if we do this. That was the goal. And then it was like, hey, we'll get in the press box too. And next week we're like, they'll feed us. It's pretty crazy. So we were getting incremental gains. But at the time, like I said, it was, you're talking in the wilderness to when you talk about trying to get advertising. What really happened, though, that grew things was we became known as, people you can count on in the industry. So coaches learned that they could trust us, because there's a lot of news media out there trying to get these gotcha stories. When a kid gets busted for pot or something like that, that gets them hits. We weren't interested in anything like that. We were interested in being a cheerleader for what we had a passion about. And it opened so many doors. I mean, I ended up writing several books about Texas high school football. One of my best friends is the head of the UIL, the governing body of Texas high school football. Another great friend is the head of the Texas High School Coaches Association. So once you have that group built up, then you reach out to somebody and say, hey, would you like to advertise? Then it's easy.
Okay, but advertising can be a double-edged sword.
Yes.
You don't want to come in every single time and tell them, hey, buy my book.
Right.
You want to be able to provide, in your particular case, entertainment, awareness, in some cases, education, but the latest news on what's really important to people this week, this Friday night, whatever it may happen to be. So are you looking at having this is for a business person. Mm-hmm. So I have a passion, I have an audience. How often should I have a podcast?
Perfect question. The sweet spot is once a week. And the sweet spot for length is 25, 35, maybe 40 minutes if it's really interesting, because that's the other power of podcasting that listeners really appreciate, is that it's time shifted. Unlike your drive time radio, if you don't tune in right then, you don't hear that show. But with podcasting, you listen whenever you want to. So when we put out a show, you listen to it when you walk the dog, when you're driving to work, when you're doing whatever it is that you have a little bit of downtime to pay attention. So So that's really the key is don't worry about, like I said, even the money of it initially, um, because as a business person, let's say you're a business coach, well, you share your information and you don't try to sell, but you just say, here's my information, here's what I know. Who are they going to call when they need those services? That's really what it comes down to. That's kind of I guess the subtle way to sell without putting ads all over it.
Okay, so I may have a book. It may be a lot of information or a service or something else coming up, an event in town. But if it's a time-related event, you want the word out.
Yeah.
And so we don't care if we hear about it 2 or 3 times in the course of the next couple of weeks. But if every time you come on board, all you're doing is selling a product or service or whatever, people have a tendency to tune out a little bit. It's like when that sales phone call comes in, you can tell within a half a second that's somebody you don't know who wants to sell you something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but if the information is current, I love to listen to TED Talks. That's one of my I love to listen to, especially if I'm doing something. I can do it in the background, and if it's a TED Talk, I don't need to really pay attention to their screen or something. I can be doing a myriad of things, and that's the same value with podcasting. You could be out walking, you could be driving to work, you could be doing a lot of things and catch up on Texas high school football or a number of other things. So you use the term time shifting. Is that a term you invented?
No, not at all. No, it's a term that I heard early on, and I just latched onto it because it kind of tells the story really well, And you talked about whether or not you should promote stuff, right? Well, this is what's called opt-in content. This isn't interruption marketing like, radio and television commercials and things like that. They've opted into that. So you're right. Anytime they get bored with your content, they will unsubscribe and never listen to you again. So I always tell people the same thing, and it's the same thing whether you're on podcasting, social media, whatever. 90% of the time, you should educate or entertain. And then that other 10%, in a very subtle way, say, oh, by the way, I have a special on this, or my book comes out tomorrow, whatever it is. And they'll forgive that. In fact, they'll most likely, because you haven't been pushing things on them constantly, they will revel in the opportunity to support you that way.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. And especially if it's at the end of the show where they're going to bring it off anyway, then that makes sense. So, but if I do get an advertiser, is it somebody that I know, love, and trust and would want business going that way? Or do I care it's money because I have them on my show? What are your specifics for getting an advertisement?
Yeah, that's a personal choice with us, especially since our big bang was with the Texas high school football crowd. We were approached early on by beer companies and gambling places, and we're like, no, we can't do that. We're not going to give you those ears because it reflects poorly on us. Whether or not we agree with any of it doesn't matter. We just can't promote something to high school kids that we feel bad about. So that's a personal preference. I've seen some people that have sold anything and everything on their podcast. Others, they're very picky. So that's up to you.
Okay, so that brings a point that you're selling to an audience. So your podcast is set up for a specific audience. So before you really even begin podcasting, you really need to know who is your audience and how do you reach them? How do you go about doing that?
Well, that's one of the things that a lot of podcasters don't take into consideration, which is why 90%, this is a crazy number, of the podcasts ever make it past episode 7. Because one, they're not focused. Because they are not focused, they can't build an audience. If you try to be a talk show about everything, well, who's going to tune in regularly? Not a lot of people. So they've got to get concise on who they want ahead of time and then craft their show around it. Ideally, that's something they're still passionate about, because otherwise, they're just out there being a huckster trying to sell something. But yeah, I think, you know, you hit the nail on the head. You've got to figure out who your audience, you're trying to serve, and then come up with a business model that makes sense.
Well, I think Gail's hit that many, many times when you're networking. You have to know who are you networking to and how do you get to them.
Yeah.
We put out a lot of information. I use this example quite often when I'm speaking to smaller groups. I say, hey, Chris, what does it take to be a successful fisherman? And I get answers from bait to this and that. I mean, we go back and but in reality, what you need to be a successful fisherman is one thing, only one. It applies everywhere. You need hungry fish.
Yeah,
If you
exactly.
don't have hungry fish, nobody's going to bite.
Yep.
So if you're putting out information, advertising, nothing's happening, your audience may not be hungry right then.
Right.
But at some point in time, the audience will become hungry and they'll know who you are and you've already established your credibility. And that is, I think, part of that awareness and education and entertainment that as you bring your podcast past episode 15 and 25 and 35, that you really do have that staying power. Tell us a little bit. You mentioned the 100,000 downloads. 100,000 downloads on your podcast with songs.
With what?
With songs, you had a podcast for a
Oh
while.
yeah. That one was getting 100,000 a week. This was at a weird time in the radio industry, right? Where Clear Channel Communications was gobbling up stations, and the rules against having multiple news outlets in one market were being relaxed. And so they were gobbling up everybody. And what was happening was the entire music scene was the same 20 songs being played on every station. And if you were older, if you weren't pretty, you know, you didn't get played anymore. So on my show, in addition to playing what are called pod safe songs, which are songs that the artist has given us the rights to play, or they're not licensed through ASCAP or RIAA, we could play any of those without any copyright violations. So I would add those up and play which ones are the most popular. And my show also played a bonus track, you know, one that I thought, hey, everybody needs to hear. Well, James Brown, his last release could not get radio play, but he let me play it and debut it on my show. And Ann Wilson from Heart, when she did a solo album, she apparently was too old because they wouldn't play her stuff. So I got to release her song there. A lot of the bands that are bigger now, Ingrid Michaelson, Death Cab for Cutie, they were indie bands at the time that nobody knew, and they couldn't get any play. So we released them on our shows. And what we discovered was, yeah, the music industry is full of gatekeepers. and there's great music everywhere. There's tons of great music all over the world. And because of that, there was a voracious appetite to hear stuff that wasn't Jessica Simpson at the time. That she playing everywhere, and nobody I knew liked her. I mean, I'm sorry if you like Jessica Simpson, but yeah, it just you know, it was a chance to do something nobody else was doing, which is why that one blew up. But in retrospect, I probably should have kept that one going, because that one probably would be doing so much better right now.
So how do you measure success with podcasting?
Well, it depends on you also, because I've got friends who do things like, you know, when Game of Thrones was big, would do a Game of Thrones podcast where them and a couple friends would talk about the episode. Their success was, you know, their 100, 200 people listened to it and, you know, gave them great feedback, and that's all they wanted out of it. I do it as a business. So, you know, the Texas high school football one has grown from one episode a week during the football season to 25 different shows covering different teams, different regions of the state, different levels of play. And that one is measured by how much it produces, you know, as far as actual income. Got another show I do called The Marketing Drive. And that one, it's probably the most fun one that I do. while I'm driving to or from a client, I'll just hit record on my phone because something will pop into my head about marketing and I'll share it. It's anywhere from 3 to 15 minutes, depending on how verbose I am and how short my drive is. Uh, and that one, there's no direct correlation to money because it doesn't have ads in it. It doesn't sell anything. It simply is, hey, my name's Chris. I know a little bit about marketing and check it out. It's got my phone number at the end and that's it. So yeah, it's a little difficult sometimes to test where everybody heard me because they may have heard the marketing drive 15 times. They may have seen me in a networking thing, but are they going to remember this is the one that moved them over the edge? Probably not.
Okay, we are going to venture into AI.
Sure.
Has AI helped you with the podcasting world that you're in?
Yeah, it's actually helped most in the post-production, the editing, because it depends on how you are as a host. Some hosts are Johnny one take and just fly right through it and everything sounds great. All you have to do is put an intro and outro, maybe some background music, add a commercial, some things like that. We can do that pretty quick. But some of our clients, which we do editing for other people's podcasts as well, some of our clients, there's lots of ums, ahs, and hold on, scratch that. Let me say that again. So there's lots of edits, and AI has made that quicker and easier. You've got some programs you can upload the audio to. It will give a transcription. You can just pull the text out you don't like. It will fix the audio, spit it out, and then you've also got that transcription, which in the past I've paid VAs quite a bit of money to transcribe just so I had the SEO juice from everything that was said in that episode. So yeah, it's helped a lot in that respect. And we played around at this Business Success Challenge the other day with another tool that came out recently, which allows you to train AI on your voice, not just sound like you, but inflections and what you get excited about and how you tell a joke and how you laugh, all of that. It learns from what you give it as far as information, background on you. You can send it a text and it can make your podcast now.
Now, you mentioned a minute ago that you got into your studio and you drove to work, but your studio is literally just a cell phone, right?
Well, when I'm driving, yes. But I mean, my studio's at home. I do have a nice place to sit at home.
But for most people,
yeah,
this can be their studio.
You're right. That you can do 99% of everything, and it sounds comparable to a big, expensive studio.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I'm going to say a month and a half, 2 months back, I had a gentleman on, a good friend of mine from Dallas, and he got me involved with a group. And you're talking about I could be speaking Spanish or Japanese, French, Portuguese right now, and my lips would be moving exactly in conjunction with the word in Portuguese or whatever language I'm talking in. And so I signed up for this back about Thanksgiving or something, and they're still developing it a little bit. But from an AI perspective, I am sitting here and I push the button and it goes to Portuguese, and I haven't changed anything. All you're doing is seeing me. The words are exactly what I am saying in Portuguese, and I sound like it. And it kind of blew me away a little bit because it was just so instantaneous and flexible. And so AI, more than just get me something off of whatever, it's now into video and audio and everything else.
Yeah, it's gotten crazy. In fact, ChatGPT just came out with, or OpenAI, the company that makes ChatGPT, came out with a service called Soro, and it will create full videos, like long videos that you just type up what you want, and it looks photorealistic. There's a sample of it with two dogs running and jumping, and I swear they're really two dogs running and jumping, but it made all of it.
I'm making a note right here so I don't forget that.
Yeah.
So I signed up for ChatGPT a while back. I learned a lot from it. I also learned that you have to be real careful what you ask for.
Yes.
You get exactly what you ask for. And so I said, okay, here's a chapter, edited for me. Well, it gave me 2 paragraphs. That's not what I wanted.
Right.
If I said edit for spelling, I got what I wanted. If I said edit for diction, edit for whatever, then
Yeah.
if edit for eighth grade understanding, I would get it. And eventually, over time, I found that proofread was pretty good for my business of editing.
Yeah.
But then I asked ChatGPT, I said, what do I need to do in order for ChatGPT to give me this? And I spelled it out.
Yep.
And it gave me a little paragraph. And so I saved that paragraph. I put it in, put my 10 pages in, boom. I would
Yeah.
get everything the way I wanted. So it's definitely a learning curve.
Yeah, that's one of the things we covered in last night's AI thing, and it was prompt engineering, because that is the key. Is those who become good prompt engineers will be the ones who get the most out of AI for sure.
But I noticed that I signed up for Bard, and I would ask the same question in Bard as I would in ChatGPT, and pretty much get the same answer.
Yeah,
Little difference, maybe a little bit more on this end, a little bit less. It doesn't matter. But it was very comparable. Uh, Both free, although I do pay the ChatGPT $20 a month or whatever it is.
hmm
And I said, well, let me go ahead and compare. At that time, it was Azure. Now it's they just changed the name and just changed the name this week. Cyber something. I can't think of what the new name is.
right. Yeah, yeah. Like let me see, Copilot and Gemini.
Gemini,
Yeah,
I think is what
yeah,
it is.
yeah,
But anyway, I had all sorts of problems signing up for it. They wanted me to go here, fill this in, go here, and by the time that I got a half hour involved in this thing, I watched 2 or 3 of their videos, and then I said, okay, let me ask them the same question. Can't find the information you're looking for. Let me ask it a different way. Can't find, and I'm saying, that was definitely 2 thumbs down. I had taken well over 40 minutes of my time on something that I spent less than a minute with Bard and got answers.
yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of value there for people who really want to dive into it. But for me, that particular AI was unsatisfactory. So who should be using AI right now?
I think everybody actually. It's funny because everything we're going over is stuff we went over in our thing, and I want to remind me later to mention the Business Success Challenge. But I think that there's 2 groups that are out there that will interact with AI. Those who are in it, and that's the people who play around and find some really cool things and they go, oh, that was neat. And those who are into it. And the difference there being the ones who are into it, who really dig in and really find what they need to do, ask more questions, find other people who are involved and work with them. I think those are the ones who are going to see the real power of it. And it applies to all business types. It applies to personal life. You name it. It is. It's funny. Everybody's afraid of Skynet coming and destroying the humanity. But I'm not worried about that. I think the big fear is not staying up to speed with it.
I use it a lot for some level of research in what I do, but I also use it. Let's say that I write an article for LinkedIn. I'll put the whole article in there and I say, give me 10 headline for an article and give me the keywords for each one. So now I have selections and I like that one, maybe. And so I go down through there and I may combine 2 of them, or actually 3 of them in some cases. And I come out with some what I think are really good headlines based on what's there, something I would not even have thought of before.
Right.
So for me, an after effect of writing, I take my stuff and I say, hey, AI, what do you think?
Yep.
And I ask it a specific question about it. And so I find that of immense value. If I'm doing some research and I want to know about a specific cause, if I say, AI, tell me about the causes of Alzheimer's, I'm making the standard 2 or 3 lines that happen all the time. But if I say, I want to know about uric acid in Alzheimer's, I want to know, I will get, I can't imagine how, I get it. But if the same thing happens in Google, you ask a basic question, you're going to get a basic answer.
Right.
You have to know how to ask the question. And I think that's what you touched on a little while ago, is the fact that the prompt is so important as to what you're going to get. Now, I also understand that AI tries to not necessarily mimic you, but become you.
Yes.
With regard to understanding what and why you're looking for things. So if you talk pretty much in the humorous mode all the time, or if you're a scientist or whatever, that's the reflection that AI is going to give back over time. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it depends on the AI. It's another one of the things we went over recently was the differences between the different chatbots. Some of them are a little more attuned and will ask you questions to get what you want. Others, like ChatGPT, it doesn't ask questions unless you tell it, hey, and ask me any questions you need answered to give me better results. But you mentioned what you do on LinkedIn. That is something we're going to be talking about tonight. I do something very similar. That podcast I talk about, the marketing drive, I have that transcribed anyway. So I take that, load it into chat, and say, hey, rewrite this as a LinkedIn newsletter. And it does a great job. And then I do the same thing. And so now that allows me to repurpose content. So, everybody kind of knows you should be repurposing, but nobody has real hands-on how to do it other than, oh, walk over here and type it, walk over here and type it. No, let AI do all the work. Then edit. You must edit. I can't stress that enough. You can't trust what it writes because you want it in your voice.
Okay, so do you invite or ask or tell the AI to go look at your LinkedIn profile so it knows who you are, or is this just something that's evolved over time that it's assumed identity of what you want to put out?
Yeah, I've got a plugin for ChatGPT that allows me to set some things like the tone and stuff like that. So it has learned who I am. But then I'll also, in some instances, when I'm writing something or having it give me some ideation, I don't say it writes for me because I never put its results up there verbatim. But I want it to give me some ideas or maybe to reformat. Like I said, with the marketing drive, I'm free associating while I'm driving. So sometimes I go off on weird tangents. So I rely on ChatGPT or one of these to put it into, a workflow, and then I'll go and fix it. But then I'll ask also, when I'm done, I'll say, oh, yeah, make this a little more casual or make this a little more upbeat and let it rewrite it. So, I take a look at the results and always make sure it's me and it's not Chat GPT or Claude or one of those doing the writing.
I heard it, one of the guys in a luncheon group I go to every month, and he was in court with somebody else, and ChatGPT had written the thing to the whatever the case was. Well, what was written was not, I mean, you could not connect the two. Here's the case, here's the understanding of that, disconnect totally. So what you said earlier, just because it gives you something does not guarantee accuracy. And so that part I learned about 3 months ago. I said, okay, fine. I'm very definitely pay attention to what, and like you, I don't use it to rewrite my stuff.
Right.
In context for publishing something. I use it for helping me make it a little bit better understanding.
Right.
Bring it, I write very technically, so I need to bring it down to a 7th grade level. And that I find quite apropos for my business. But the other thing is that if I just, and I've seen this myself, if I just use ChatGPT and say, write this, it's very sterile.
Yeah, very, very.
And if I take and I put it into a couple of different spell checkers or grammar checkers, Grammarly, and I will pick up these little nuances that, well, I didn't see that, but it certainly makes more sense.
Yeah.
And so if you do something and have ChatGPT create something for you, run the Grammarly afterwards. It's free.
Yeah.
And you'll pick up the little nuances there that maybe is just not quite the way I want it. And then you go back in and look at what's there. One of the things that I do, and I have to do this all the time, if and when. I use if a lot when I'm writing. And I go back and I'll put find if, and I'll go all the way through. And I remember one document I had 76 ifs. And I think I changed 72 of them to when.
Right.
So it's more, if you do this, okay. But when you do this, it's a different context of imparting knowledge to somebody.
Right.
And so I try to do who and whom, you and your. There's a lot of different things in there that, depending on how that, I don't want to be a you. That so I need to have some, what do you want to call it? I need to have somebody pull off on the reins a little bit to
Yeah.
just allow things to. So it's a nice tool to help you get a better product.
Yeah. And then the flip side of that is when it writes something, you do want to put some of your vernacular in there so that feels like it comes from you.
Yeah. So howdy, y'all.
Yeah, exactly. Love that.
But it's interesting that the tools are there. I mean, a year ago we really didn't have much on this thing, and all of a sudden now you have a new tool that not only improves your ability here, but in this business you have over here, podcast. Boom, you have new tools that make things faster, easier, more accurate, whatever.
Yeah.
So we're, as you mentioned earlier, the technology is there, and if you happen to be a nerd, maybe it's cool nerd, not cool dude. But it's for those people on radio under Chris's name, he has cool dude, and that's what I'm referring to right now. So we have both a radio and a video audience out there. So, but anyway, Chris, we're getting down to that point in time where I would love to have you talk a little bit about the show that you're doing right now, the Success Summit, whatever it is. Let's talk about that, and then lead into how do people contact you, what's a good client for you, those kinds of things. So why don't you take the next 3 minutes and tell us what's important.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. So I've mentioned the business success challenges a couple times here. That's what myself and Gail Stolzenberg have been putting on for the past several weeks. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of each week, 7 p.m. Central, we do a half-hour lesson on a different subject. Red mentioned already, the first one was networking that Gail led. Then we did podcasting, which I did. We're doing AI now. Also, I'm doing that one. And then we're jointly doing one on business philosophy and psychology, just trying to give somebody some free stuff to help them improve their business. And then part of that is we have this special VIP Facebook insiders group that, people who attend this get access to that group. And so that's kind of an insider group where we can help each other in our businesses. The next step from there will be what we call our 5-day intensive. And that's where we take some of these same subjects, but we dig deeper, because in an hour long a day for 3 days, you can't get real deep. You can get the overview. In fact, on the AI, we spent the first day just saying stuff like, what is a chatbot, explaining the different chatbots, explaining image editing, stuff like that. Second day, we dug in, we did some prompt writing. We give you some homework, and there's usually a reward for the homework. So that's not a bad thing. And then you can find out about those freshmediaworks.com/success challenge. You can sign up and be notified of all the upcoming ones. Again, they're all free, no charge for any of that. Freshmediaworks.com, that's my company. We're a full service marketing company, but we focus on podcasting. And that's really who we're trying to help right now more than anybody. Businesses and people who want to either develop their own show, maybe become a guest on other people's shows, or simply advertise. Either way, advertising, there's no greater return on ad spend than podcasting right now. So I encourage everybody, not just because I'm in it. I've been in it for 20 years and I haven't been encouraging everybody to do this, but right now is the time. You should be involved in podcasting in one of those 3 ways, if not all 3 for sure. Again, my name's Chris Daly, freshmediaworks.com. My name is spelled funny, so you can find me anywhere on any social you're on. I'm out there. And because there's only one of me in the U.S., you won't get the wrong guy. You'll get me every time.
Okay, last name Daly, Doelle.
Right.
Freshmediaworks.com, just exactly as it sounds. And Success Summit. Is that correct?
Success Challenge.
Success Challenge. So Fresh Media Works, all one,
Yeah.
.com/success challenge.
Right.
And again, Chris Daly, Doelle. And Chris, fantastic time today. Thank you so very much for joining me.
Oh, you bet.
I do my best to be on the show tonight. I can't imagine. I don't even know what I did the last 2 nights at that time. But anyway, I already put it on my phone for tonight, so I know I have it.
I love it. All right. Thank you so much, Red. I appreciate it.
We'll catch you later on, and look forward to having you maybe join back here on this show or another one on the USA Global TV and Radio Network.
I would love it.
Take care. Hi, Red O'Loughlin here, getting ready to sign off on The Wise Ones today. My show, Talking Head, starts in about 17 minutes. We've been talking about STEM and health. Now, STEM is usually oriented towards science and technology and engineering and math. But in STEM for health, I'm looking at stress, toxins, emotional, and mental. And I'm really looking at how can STEM in those contexts help you with your physical health, but more importantly, your longevity health. And that's what we're talking about. So last week, we talked a little bit about stress. I hope to finish up stress today and then begin toxins next week. So join me today on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And I'll look forward to seeing you very shortly. If not, catch us on YouTube on the archive. Thank you. Take care. Have a wonderful day.